Left, we also have Geoffrey Awiti, who is the principal of Compuera College right here in the capital. Gentlemen, karibuni sana. We've been watching this together with you. Start with you, Mugambi. What do you make of the 2020 examination results as announced by the professor?
Thank you, Bruce. I think we've made tremendous progress as a country when it comes to KCPE and generally in our examinations. And I think one of my key thing that I've noted in our KCPE progress, not just for this year, but even the last one, is that the integrity of our examinations is growing, it's becoming much better. We trust more our results. And cheating cases have drastically gone down. So if we go back to the last 4 years or so, and you compare now the cheating cases that have been there, we are going to, this is the right progress. We are making right progress. That is the key thing that I've noted.
Geoffrey, what do you make of the announcement?
All right.
And the performance as
thank
a
you. Just to correct, the principal at Compuera Academy.
Oh, Academy.
Where we are also receiving our results. And
okay.
I've just sent through the SMS. The results are good. Generally, if I listen to Professor, whatever he has said, I can attest to it that the milestone that has been made, and generally the results, the way, because I'm also able to get the results, we are getting what our learners deserve. So generally it is that after the labor that you have labored all those years, you are getting whatever you have you worked for it. Then something that I was keen to listen to Magoha. I was listening to him when he's talking about the CBC, because that is something that is here with us, where we are going after this KCPE. Like the effort the government has made when it comes to building of classes. And also something that has also made me listen keenly to his when he was making his address, the scholarship. That even that child coming from a poor background, he will be able to go to school for the next 4 years since 2019. So I look at generally the speech and then generally the results that we are receiving. It's a good year.
Yeah, it's been a good year and a challenging year as well. And also I have to apologize to my viewer because I have said 2020 is exactly 2021 examination result. Apologies for that error. And talking of challenges that we've had COVID, we've also had the drought situation in the country, but we have had better results from 2021 in comparison. How do you make of that?
Correct. If you look at the top candidate, the results have gone, the top candidate has gone 5 marks less compared to last year. However, the general performance has actually improved, because if you look at those candidates who scored between 300 and 400, the numbers have increased by almost we have increased from 8,091, that was in 2020, to 11,000. So that is a very, very good improvement in terms of performance. The same situation also for those students who scored between 200 to 300. The numbers have increased. So despite that the top candidate has scored lesser, the general performance has actually improved. Yeah.
And Geoffrey, something else that Magoha has talked about, the boy child. In the last couple of years, we had seen that the boy child we were almost forgetting the boy child, but as we have seen is that he's talked about the boy child is now catching up. We've seen the male gender 50.28, 49.72 as compared to the previous year. What do you make of that?
In fact, this is something that has been pain for us who are men, looking at how our boys have been disappearing. But I thank God
with the number of 320 students. Now, again, as I said before, this is quite a progression going downwards, which means we are having lesser students cheating. Again, it also points to probably some of the weaknesses of our current system, and that's why it has been a good idea to switch to CBC, because CBC there will be no need to cheat. I think that's correct, Marim.
Yeah, just to pick it up from where he has brought it up. The thing is, I think it's also time for us to also change our mindset to the CBC. Because if you look at KCPE, we've been putting a lot of focus on the KCPE exams, the exams that you are doing at the tail end.
Yes.
But you remember, with competence-based assessment, this is assessment that you've been doing throughout. Then the time that you'll be in grade 6, now you're only doing the 40%. So you find that the 60% you need to have dealt with it when you're in grade 5, grade 4, and grade 3. So I think it is something that is worth mentioning, that now, in fact, from his speech, he wants also people to change their mindset to CBC.
Yes.
Generally, yes.
And something else, that 18,000 students on scholarship, 9,000 more this year. And he has touched on something very crucial, is that he has insisted that the president himself has already directed the ministry to ensure that only those who are really in need of those bursaries get the money. And of course, they're going to be increasing that to better the current education system that we have in the country.
For sure it is. Because I look at that child in Kibera, where sometimes he goes to school only because school sometimes provide food, because there's something to do with free meals at school. And then you find that when sometimes you realize even some of these students who are scoring 400, 300 marks, some of them are coming from challenged background. But when the government comes out clearly and say that there is something here for you, it means a lot to these children. So I think moving forward, yes, we've been given opportunity for them to go, but I think it's something that it needs to be increased more, because there are many children, there are many deserving children. Even I think by tomorrow, you'll even get to know that there's children who are coming from even the slums, getting good marks. But the challenge is going to come when it comes to when a child in a slum has been called to Alliance High School.
Yes.
You realize that the child cannot raise the fee to go to Alliance High School. So with this scholarship, it is something that is going to change. It is the game changer for the children who are coming from background that are disadvantaged, for them now to look for a brighter future.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're also an exams expert. 6 papers have registered improved grades. We have English, composition, Swahili, both the Insha and language itself, Kenya Sign Language. You also have the sciences and the social studies. What do you make of that? But we are experiencing the usual mathematics, Kiswahili issue.
Yes, I think this is one also of the reasons why CBC was introduced. Yes, because it is important to admit that we have students who have competencies in different areas. So they might not be academically competent, but they have other competencies. They have talents in other areas. So therefore, when we look at the performance in terms of subjects, we cannot conclude that we have poor students by just looking at the performance in terms of subjects. Probably what we want to do is to be able to channel these students who have performed poorly in some of the subjects to the areas that they are more stronger in. And therefore, we don't have kids who are dropping out of the system because they failed in one subject.
And then something also, I think it's also, we need to make a lot of effort. We need to invest a lot in teaching of Kiswahili and mathematics, because now it is, because Kiswahili is a national language. And then when our children struggle, you feel that there's something amiss somewhere. So I think moving forward, I think it is high time we find out what is this challenge in Kiswahili that our children are facing. And I think NEC can also look at it and to find out what has been our methods of teaching. Is it something that is in line with the standards that NEC has put in terms of examining these subjects that you find that children are finding difficulties in them, also mathematics and Kiswahili?
Yes, and before you add on that, let's bring in the 5 top students. Of course, we know Bruce Mackenzie Magata is the top candidate in this year's, in the last year's 2021 KCSE, which has just been announced by the CS Fred KCPE, that has just been announced by Education CS, Magata, Bruce, Mackenzie being the top students. Gentlemen, if that list can be shown, you can see that it's quite neck and neck, if you ask me. And the good CS has also talked about the difference being quite close. We have Magata, Bruce, Mackenzie at 428, Momanyi Ikeboi at 427, Charity Buyanzi at 426, Mbogwa S. Wairimu 426, Muteti S. Linda has also scored 426, and the list just keeps going on, 426, 426, 426. What do you make of that, neck and neck, as opposed to other years?
I think, Bruce, this is a good improvement in terms of competition at the top, which is good. It shows that we are narrowing gap between the students who have better facilities and those who are underprivileged. There's also something notable that I think most of us could have noted by now, that the special needs candidates also did very, very well. Especially that you find that the top students, special needs students scored 417, which is actually among the top performers in the country. So I believe if we put more effort in assistive technology for special needs runners, we will be able to make sure that we net all these candidates, all those with special needs, and we don't leave anybody behind. Yeah.
And something that will also put a smile on a lot of parents' faces is that the CS has talked about just give out the results. You can deal with the balances and everything a little bit later. It will be quite a relief. I remember during our time it wasn't like that. You have to go with all the fees so that you may get your results back then.
All right, it is a relief to the parents, but it is something that I think from the perspective of a principal, I think it's something that parents need to have a human face. Just appreciate the schools that you've been here. Just ensure that you.
I know where you're coming from.
I know it is a directive.
Yes,
it's a directive that has been given, which is good to the parent, but to the owners of the school, it is a big pinch to them.
Because at the end of the day, you've already given out the results.
Yes,
you can either pay, you can decide not to pay.
Yeah. No, so that's what I'm saying. From the perspective of a head of an institution, it is something that it is hard.
Yes.
Because once the results and you have stamped it, he goes, there's chances that you will get that fees back, because what was connecting with this person is the results, and now he has it. So
Mugambi, I know where Geoffrey is coming from, but what are your sentiments on the same?
I think as a principal, he has to play a balancing act. However, the directive from the ministry will probably have to make him rethink or probably come up with a different process of handling the arrears, the fees arrears, because again, schools have to keep running, especially if you have a private school. So they will need to come up with a compromise on how to make sure that the students get their results as directed by the ministry, while at the same time they are able to recover their arrears so they can keep their schools running.
Now, Geoffrey, you are a principal, and I'm quite sure you're full of expectations that your school will perform quite well. And the balance between the private schools and the private is something that has always crept in when we come to examination being released. That is something that forms a key aspect in terms of how students have performed, the private schools versus the public schools.
All right. If you look at the top 10 students, talk about Rofin Junior, talk about Gilgil Hill Academy, talk about McKinney, you find that these children are coming from private schools.
Yes.
So yes, there's a big gap, and I think it's a gap that has been has come out because of the free primary education. You find that in these public schools, you find a class holding like 60 students, but you find in a private school, you're only handling maybe 25 students. So there's a tendency of a teacher delivering, pushing these 25 kids to optimize their best, unlike in a public school. So it is something that the stakeholders need to again look at how can, in fact, the most important thing is to bring more teachers in the public sector. Because I think when you have enough teachers, more so in these public schools, they can do marvelous job. But that is something that if you look at in the private sector, we are talking about value for money. You have invested your coins there, so the parent is expecting better results. And this is something now that this is something that has made pupils in the private sector to really do so well, just like even the results that we have seen today. It is very clear. And then also you've mentioned about my school. In fact, I'm getting the SMS. The results is very encouraging because like there's a student I've just seen our results, Nyanene Thor, getting 405. Okay. So it is amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Let's be fast to congratulate on the same.
Thank you.
But away from the exam itself, but it's something much related to the same, is that the professor has talked about the government efforts in making sure that there's 100% transition. There's the classrooms are almost complete, just as the professor said. And looking at the costs and what we are used to, it says a lot about us as a nation and the education sector. It's talking about those classes have just slightly over 700,000 as opposed to the 1.2 million shillings. We're talking about 500,000 shillings per classroom. That is quite something, if you ask me.
So what we must, like give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And Professor is a very thorough person. And I think looking at the cost and looking at things on the ground, because you realize that a class that was maybe set to 1 million to be used, you find that 700 has been used. So you find that the government has decided to cut and to ensure that that coin, if it was that coin that was meant to go for the cement, let it go for that cement. So it's something that we must appreciate the government, because it is something that they are doing. And also, when talk about transition, it is something, if I look at how it was being done last year, and still Magoa is still there, Professor is still there to ensure it is done, those guys, they were walking door to door, finding out why is this child has not gone to school. So whatever he has said, he will really implement it. So it's a plus to the government.
Mugambi, also touch on the 100% transition that the government hopes to achieve after this class.
Yes, before I talk about the 100% transition, just to hand to what Mwalimu said, the shortage of classes is a problem. But also the professor has also pointed out that there's a shortage of teachers, around 114,000 shortage of teachers.
Yes.
Now you realize that this is a big problem. It's a big gap. So the TSC together with the ministry will have to work out a method to cross on these gaps as we transition to CBC. Yes. Now coming to the issue of 100% transition, we need to put in place measures to make sure that those students who have scored, especially those who score lower marks, that's where we lose most of the students. Those who score probably 100 marks and below, that's where most of them drop off and don't transition to high school. So we need to have in place mechanisms to make sure that they can go to those local schools near them. So we've had an improvement in terms of day schools, but we also need to make sure that even the CBC, I think it's one of the goals for CBC is to tap into some of these students. Academically, they may not be gifted, but they have talent in other areas. So we need to have in place more of those training institutions which don't require you to have a secondary school certificate. For example, artisan. And that way we are not going to lose people. So we might not get 100% transition to high school, but we'll get 100% transition to high school and to other institutions.
And as we wind up, I do remember a lot of even psychiatrists and psychologists have talked about the pressure that the education system for the last couple of, let's say 2-3 years, has placed on our students. You know, the terms, back-to-back terms, and you can see that they are posting quite enviable results, if you ask me.
All right, so what I must say is that our children have been resilient. because COVID was here. The time is
The
short.
drought was here.
The drought is here.
Yeah.
And then you find
2 weeks break.
Not even 2 weeks, a week break.
Yes.
And then you find that that's why human beings are dynamic. So it's something that has made children to also do what? To adjust. And thank God that the generation that we have today is a generation that will really adjust very fast to the environment. So it is something that something that has been attributed to the talks, and also the effort that the parents, the teachers, the society has played. Because if you look at these results, there is so much that we can pick from them. And then if you look at the child within a short time getting better results, it is just that tenacity, the resilient in this team that has been working with these people, and I think it is something worth commending. And I think
They did well.
They did well.
They did well.
Yeah.
They did perfectly well, considering the conditions. We had a situation in Baringo where 2 schools were interrupted.
Yeah, security challenges
on the first day of the exams. But these students were able to go back there and complete the exams. So this is the resilience Mwalimu is talking about. Yeah. So basically, we need to support our kids. They are performing well despite the conditions, drought, banditry. Sometimes we have had incidences of terrorists, and that's why some teachers have deserted schools. So I believe that if we put in place the right measures and mechanisms to address some of those infrastructural things, then our kids will be able to perform much better.
And of course, remember, if you're a parent or you want to know how your student or your pupil or your son or daughter has performed, just send the index number to the number 20076, and you will be able to get the results of that. Remember, head teachers have been told to give out the results to the students, and if there are any issues when it comes to the fees, they can discuss that later. And the government has said it wants to ensure that 100% transition is still on track. And of course, I have some gentlemen who have been in the education system for a while. There's something else that Professor Magoha talked about when it comes to the construction of the classrooms. They've been able to do almost 90% of what they're supposed to be doing, and we expect that the junior secondary will be beginning anytime from May.
Now, the junior secondary is supposed to begin January next year, because this year we expect another exam, national exam, for grade 6 at the end of the year. Actually, in December for grade 6. Assessment. And then they are supposed to be doing their assessment, that the one that is having 40%, so that as they transit. Now, the government has said that they have built classes, they have built rooms for our children who are transiting.
Okay, they say they have used 5.1 billion shillings.
But you look at the number of students who have sat for the KCPE this year. It is 1.2 million students. Now, you have grade 6, who I think the number will be big, because but now you find that this is now where the private sector need to come in. Yes, the government has done their part. Can the private sector come in? The likes of Compara Group of Schools, can they come in? Because there's a gap. Because he has said that there's a percentage that they have done. So in fact, if you are an investor who is investing in this field of education, that gap, it is for me and you to do what? To fill it. Because we have millions of students who are in grade 6, who are transiting to junior secondary come next year. Where will they go? Because already the government is saying that they've used 5.2 billion?
5.1 billion.
5.1 billion so far. But you when you look at it, you find that it is just, yes, they've done something, but there's still a lot to be done. And that's where now the private sector pick it up, the likes of Compara Group of Schools, build those schools, let people come to schools like that. Yeah, because there's a lot to be done still.
Actually, you can wrap up with that one. Actually, he's brought about a very interesting point on perhaps a PPP, a public-private partnership, so that we may increase even if it means classrooms, because he's talked about a very good number, 1.2 million, and we expect all of them to transit.
Yes, one of the challenges of transiting to CBC, of course, is putting in place the right infrastructure. Again, as we talked before, we have a challenge in terms of the numbers of teachers. So that puts a challenge in terms of how do we transition. Do we have teachers to teach the new curriculum? Are they trained well enough? So that's a challenge, and that's now where PPP comes in. So I think now it is time also for the government to make it more easier for the private players to be able to play a key role in the education sector.
Indeed. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Actually, if just joined us, they were here since Tamrini, where they were hosted by Nancy Okware, and they were speaking Swahili. So indeed, you were good teachers when you were good teachers. But he was a teacher. He's still a teacher. He is now Benson Mugambi, who is an education specialist and also has been a lecturer at the top universities that we have here in the country. And we also have a principal of a private institution, Compuera group of schools. That is Geoffrey Awiti. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insight and for making time. And thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
That's where we put a cap. But just in case you joined us, Bruce Mackenzie Magata is the top student in the KCPE that has just been announced. But we have the list of the top 10 students, and it's coming up next. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ben Troy Njoe. Let's do this again some other time.
Are you an aspiring candidate in the upcoming general elections? Do you want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all prospective candidates. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke